I learned that there is a way to unlock literally 50 times more energy on your body. After that month, it was like night and day. I was like, oh my God, if you woke up every day thinking you were hungover and then all of a sudden you weren't, like it was like that. It was that dramatic that I thought I can't go back.
Alex McDonald, who completed an incredible feat, running 5 marathons in 5 consecutive days while fasted, consuming only water and electrolytes. Alex has been following a low-carb diet for 14 years and a strict carnivore diet for the past 5, challenging conventional wisdom on endurance fueling.
It wasn't about body image or anything to do with that. It's literally how do I feel and how do I perform? Having sort of that mental clarity, the extra energy through the day, all of that stuff. You need to have your body switch its metabolism to be able to fuel itself efficiently on fat rather than rely on carbohydrates.
Welcome to Chief Life, the podcast that cuts the crap with science-backed insights on health, nutrition, and performance. Get expert advice, actionable tips, and everything you need to take control of your health and live your best life. Let's get started. In September 2023, Alex McDonald completed 5 marathons in 5 consecutive days while drinking just water and mineral supplementation the whole time. He did the same course 4 times, and on day 5, he ran the actual Sydney Marathon. Alex has been on a low-carb diet for 14 years and 5 years as carnivore. Hi, Alex. Welcome to our podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, mainly because I'm running my first ultra as a carnivore this Saturday. So I just like to pick your brains and ask you all the questions. Super excited about it. But before I dive into it, I would like you to introduce yourself, tell us what made you want to do this experiment, and just a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Victoria. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited about your journey coming up too, so we can get into that. But the reason that I decided to run 5 fasted marathons was through the years, and like you said, I've been doing low carb and carnivore for a very long time. So I'm dug into all of the sort of science and tried to learn as much as I could. It's become a bit of a passion, some would say obsession of mine. Now, the little nugget that I came across, which was I learnt that there is a way to unlock literally 50 times more energy on your body. So learning that, it was like, right, if this is a real thing, what's a way that I would be able to also like demonstrate that, but test it out for myself. So I'm a guy that likes to pull things apart and figure out how they work. So where I do the experiment for myself and I'm able to achieve it, then I know hand on heart, this is a real thing. So it's no longer up for someone's opinion. So having learnt that there is a way to unlock that amount of energy, it was, right, let's see if I can follow that playbook. And if it is a real thing, then let's see how far we can push it.
Yeah, that's great. Good on you. I also like experimenting on myself, especially when there is not enough science and enough research and data. I like to do my own experiments. I love that. I wanted to ask you, how long have you been on ketogenic diet, and why did you start the ketogenic diet? And also, how was your health and fitness before, and what did you used to eat before?
Yeah, sure. So I've been on a low-carb diet for a very long time, so 14 years. So I'm in my early 40s now, so I was in my sort of mid to late 20s when I started. Now, the reason I started wasn't so much the sciencey or the nutrition side. It was I came across a guy, he actually wrote a book, Art Devaney was his name, and his book was called The New Evolution Diet. Now, what really intrigued me about him was that he was a guy that was in his late 60s at the time, and he was an absolute like beast. Like he had like all the blood markers, the strength, everything about him was 30 years younger than what he actually was. So I was like, well, you know what? When I'm 60 or 70, I'd love to be that guy to be able to, run around with my grandkids and not like play with them in a token kind of way. It's like I want to be first picked on their touch footy team. So like at that age, which is what he was super fit and super healthy. So I thought, you know what, it's the outliers that really I think is where the true answers lie. So I looked into what was he doing. So he wasn't very sciencey around his approach. It was very much an evolutionary approach, which was, look, the simple rule was if it was created in the last sort of 100 years or even a couple of 100 years, probably avoid it and like start with the whole foods. So it that would be sort of the impetus. So that's what I did. I did that, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go super hard here for about a month, and we'll see how we feel, and then I'll sort of dial it back a little bit and find the middle ground. Yeah. Now, after that month, it was like night and day. I was like, oh my God, the change was, I described as the equivalent to if you woke up every day thinking you were hungover, and then all of a sudden you weren't. Like, it was like that. It was that dramatic that I thought I can't go back. So
what did you eat before though? Like, how did your diet change?
So before, I was eating kind of the standard, call it the SAD diet, really. So I was very much didn't really pay attention, but I was trying to do the right thing. So I'd be like Wheat Bix for breakfast. I'd have pasta 3 times a week. Before any event, I'd any event with like any activity, I played a lot of sport at the time. I'd make sure I was carb loaded and all that sort of thing. But there was nothing sort of unusually bad. I think even at the time, people would say I'd eat a reasonably healthy diet. It wasn't as though I was eating out every night. And I was conscious about it. I used to go to the gym sort of 3-4 times a week, trying to be fit and healthy and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't a big, like, I need to sort my life out. It was some sort of, health crisis that I need to sort out. I was in a pretty good place. And at the time, anyone would have described me as reasonably fit. So, but it was honestly how I felt was the big thing that really locked it in for me. And having done that, I was like, well, okay, how far can I take this? And that was, the rabbit hole that I started down. And from there, it's, sort of no looking back.
That's awesome. I love what you said, that your diet was made from whole foods, because there are a lot of people out there, they are on ketogenic diet, but they eat a lot of junk.
Yes.
Like keto cookies and all those things, they're full of chemicals, but just because they're low in carb, they classify as keto. So I love that. But tell us also, why did you change from, or progressed, I should say, from the ketogenic diet to carnivore diet?
Yeah, sure. So I find it was just really traveling along, like it was a bit of a journey from, call it my first iteration from going from SAD was more sort of a paleo diet. So I was very sort of big on sort of, the vegetables and the leafy greens and all of that sort of stuff. I just cut out the rice, pasta and the obvious sugar and processed things. And that was a big change for me. So, and everything was kind of good with that. But I thought as I progressed and the more I learnt, I was like, okay, there are some other things that I could cut out here. So I slowly dialed in on those. So at that time, I'd still eat sort of carrots and sweet potato, that sort of thing. It's kind of okay in the paleo world. And so I slowly cut those things out, and everything I sort of cut out and more moved towards that sort of, first of all, let's call it ketogenic end. I felt better and better. And then for the last 5 years, it was, right, how hard can I, well, not how hard, it's like how much can I squeeze out of this? Yeah. And that's what led me to carnivore. So the more that I sort of cut out and gravitated towards that, the more, the better I felt. So that was the biggest thing. And I honestly feel like there was no weight loss goal. It wasn't about, body image or anything to do with that. It's literally, how do I feel and how do I perform? So having sort of that mental clarity, the extra energy through the day, all of that stuff that kind of, and as you get older, let's just say that everyone following a standard diet or the standard lifestyle, like things break and they deteriorate and you kind of get a bit, you're not as good as you were a few years ago. I genuinely felt better than I did sort of even 10 years prior. So it was like, okay, I think I'm onto something here. So let's keep pushing.
That's great. And how strict of a carnivore are you? Like, do you have coffee? Do you have herbs, or just strict carnivore?
So no, I'd try and find that middle ground. So like for my marathon, for the training, we'll get to there, I did go as hardcore as I could, like super strict. But my every day, like post all my marathons and everything, I'm back to where I'm comfortable, which I call it, and they're loose percentages, but let's say like 90 to 95%. So the things that I will include will be, so like I'll still have, say like onions and some garlic, and I'll still drink coffee. I'll have a splash of milk in my coffee. Yeah. But that's kind of it. So I don't say I'm super strict, because I feel like you're a bit of a pariah then, and it's like, you have a sip of coffee, or you have a sip of milk, or you're out at an event. If someone cooks me a meal and I go to their house, then like I'm going to eat what they've prepared, because they've put some effort into that and I really appreciate it. So it's not as though I am that strict about it in those situations. But what I find is like the 90%, or it's probably 99%, I don't go out all that often now because I've got young kids at home too. But or I don't find myself in those situations. But where I'm in control of my diet, then I'm super strict. Like it's just, unless there's an event or a reason not to, I don't really choose, and I don't really enjoy sort of dabbling in any of that other stuff anymore.
Okay, so what does your regular day look like when you don't have any dinners out or anything, just like your regular work day? What do you eat?
Just for eating?
Yeah, just for eating.
Well, to be honest, my satiety is through the roof. So it's like on a normal weekday, I'll have dinner every night. And dinner's like, people are pretty astounded by what I eat. So it would comfortably be somewhere between, say, 700 gram to a kilo steak is what I'd have. And if I want to mix it up, then like I'll throw a bit of butter and I'll eat every bit of that steak too. I don't sort of trim the fat or anything like that. But then I might mix it up with, say, a smaller steak, but I might have some pork chops and some bacon, throw some eggs on there. And it's not like the 1 or 2 eggs, like that's not even close. Like it'd be 6 or 8 is kind of where I'd be kind of going. But for me, I don't plan my meals before. It's kind of I eat until I'm not hungry anymore. Yeah. And even before that, it's not as though I'm full and I feel like I'm bloated and I'm done. It's more it just doesn't taste good anymore. Yeah. So I dial it down at that point. So it really takes no effort. So I eat when I'm hungry. If I'm not hungry, I don't eat. And naturally I find that I'm often 1 meal a day, and then on average probably every second day I'd be having sort of lunch and dinner. And then on a weekend I might have a breakfast, which will be if I enjoy a sleep in or something, or have one of those moments, then I might have a breakfast. But that means definitely no need for lunch, and even dinner might be pretty light. Yeah. So it's about 1 meal a day.
Yeah, that's epic. I love that. Okay, so let's move on to your run. So what did you do in preparation for training, eating, just everything, the whole prep? How long did you prepare for? Tell us.
So to understand that, I think we need to talk about like the reasons why, so how I went about doing it. So the whole purpose was, in order to do this or to unlock the energy that I mentioned, the 50 times energy, you have to become what's called fat adapted. So you need to have your body switch its metabolism to be able to fuel itself efficiently on fat rather than rely on carbohydrates. So that is the key. So And just to put some numbers around that in terms of the magnitude of just how much energy there is. So on anyone at any point in time, your sort of call it carbohydrate fuel tank is about 2,000 calories. Forgive me, I'm using calories, but that's the metric everyone appreciates. It doesn't matter what you eat, how much you carb load or anything, you can only have about 2,000 calories worth of energy because your fuel tank isn't any bigger. Now, I'm what many would describe as very lean, so I'm 14% body fat at about 75 kilos. I've got 11 kilos of fat on me, not a lot. And on me, I have about 100,000 calories worth of energy, so literally 50 times in my case. So the key was, we need to unlock that by shifting at my metabolism to be able to tap into that. So to answer your question around the preparation, it was step 1, I have to be fat adapted. So that means cutting out all of the carbohydrates I can and using fat as my fuel. So if the carbs aren't available, your body kind of goes fine. It'll have that period of adjustment early on, but call it about 3 weeks and you get through the other side of that. And then at that point, your body goes, right, you're not giving me carbs, that's fine. I'm going to make all the carbs I need, and we're going to tap into this fuel tank, or enormous fuel tank, which is why your energy levels lift and you get all of those benefits. So my training was, I've been fat adapted, I would say, arguably for a very long time, given the nature of my diet. But given how aggressive my goal was of 5 marathons, it was like, okay, no one's really done this before to like the full 5 marathons. So I really don't know. So I want to give myself the best possible advantage or to be able to achieve this. So that was go completely hardcore carnivore, so nothing, no coffee, nothing but just sort of animal product and some dairy, so butter and cheese, very little milk if any, and do that. I did that for about 3 months. So on top of me already being fat adapted, it was like, let's do this a bit more.
Yeah. Wow. And did you do any strength training as well?
So then the other side was, like you said, it's training my body to be able to handle that workload. So I think one important point here is I've literally started from zero. So I've never done a marathon before. I did my first marathon on day 1 of my 5 consecutive marathons. So it wasn't as though running was something that I had a passion about or done it. I literally started from zero. So I'd start with just getting kilometres in the legs. So that was 2-3 kilometre runs at a time. About a year out is when I started that side of it. So, and I built up my kilometres up to, call it the weeks prior, I was averaging somewhere between, or even the month prior, somewhere between 60 to 100 kilometres a week is where I kind of got to. But low and slow and just sort of getting those Ks in the legs. So I didn't do I did some strength training. It was like trying to build my calf muscles and a few things, but the lessons I've learned having gone through that now, I would have spent a lot more time building the muscles in the right areas, because when you do the distance that I covered, so I ended up doing 212 kilometers over that period. You get found out really quickly because your body compensates. And if there's muscles that should be working that aren't because they're not strong enough and something else has to take over, well, you know about it really quickly, I have to say.
Strength training is extremely important.
Absolutely.
I deal in your lessons, and if you want to train for it next time, I can help you with the strength training.
I feel absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, so you had Dr. Paul Mason and Jessica Thurton helping you along the way.
Yes, that's correct.
Did they try to talk you out of it?
Not for a second. Not for a second. So I think, well, part of it was I came to them saying I'm doing this regardless, so help me. So they knew that was a losing battle if they tried. But I say that in jest. It's they genuinely, there wasn't even a shred of doubt that it was possible. Everything was sound around the principles in which I was trying to exploit. So, the literature's there's a lot of information on this stuff. It's just not widely known. So, so in having them on my team of experts that helped me, they did a tremendous job around making sure that, look, I haven't missed anything. Am I doing this the right way? What other ideas have they got around things that could help optimize me and give me the best possible chance to do it? But also having them there to know that if something went wrong, there was an expert that it would be able to sort of set me straight and say, okay, there are things you need to manage. And again, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist or any of that sort of stuff. I'm just the N=1 trying to figure stuff out. I'll put the work in on that regard, but it's not a substitute for the amount of study that they've done.
Yeah, of course.
So having them on board was absolutely critical and very much appreciated.
And so what did they make you do? Did they make you eat more during the training? Because you said you eat only once a day, sometimes twice, or
yes.
once. They make you eat more?
No, they didn't. So to give you an idea of the process, so with Jessica particularly, I'm focused on the nutrition, her being a dietitian, and she's absolutely fantastic. So it was, look, I kept a food diary of this is what I'm eating, and then we break all that down and we look at all the micronutrients, where am I deficient, where is good. We do blood panels as well to see are there certain parts of my physiology that for whatever I might be deficient in something, we need to bump it up. So I felt like we were sort of really covering everything that we needed to from that side. Yep. So that was very thorough. And in terms of eating more, that was probably from my side as well. Like in my mind, it was, okay, I'm going to do 5 days not eating, running a really, really long way. And I'm going to demonstrate how much storage I've got. So it was like, right, before we do this, let's just build that fuel tank as big as I possibly can. Obviously eating only carnivore, but the thing I would break away, so it wasn't consistent with how I am now with my eating. There was a period before that where I would eat beyond my satiety. So I would be like, you know what, I've got a big challenge coming up here. I'm going to make sure I have an extra meal. So I'll be eating I tried to do 3 meals a day, but some days I just couldn't even still. But it would be, okay, let's push beyond where I would ordinarily stop just to kind of fill those coffers a little bit more.
Yeah, great. And have you ever tried to do 5-day water only fast before the run? Because I do 5-day water only fast once every 6 months, and I couldn't imagine running marathon through the 5 days.
No, I'd never done 5 days. The most I'd ever done was 3, maybe 4 days. And like the fasting I'd done sort of those 3-day periods. And then when I set my mind to this, it was like, okay, we're going to do some training. We're going to ramp that up. I'm going to get my nutrition right, and I'd love to have a few, call it dry runs of like something close to what I'd be doing, sort of a 3-day or extended fast. Now the balancing point there was, as I just described, I'm trying to fill my fuel tanks as big as I can. So when you have a practice run of not eating for 5 days, it kind of feels like, oh, hang on, maybe I'm using some of those reserves because I don't know what it's going to be like. So hence I didn't end up doing a 5-day fast prior to doing these 5 days. The most I'd ever done was a handful of, say, 3-day fasts. Okay.
And so how did you feel throughout the challenge? Like, what did you feel like? What was your sleep like? I think I've read that your sleep wasn't great. What did you measure throughout the running and also before and after? Like, tell us.
Yeah, so I've got so much information on all of that. So, and part of the reason prior to all this was, look, I want to track everything I possibly can because it achieves a couple of things. One is, one, it proves I've done it, because otherwise people just think, well, no, you're just a lunatic that's, trying to get clicks or something like that, which is definitely not the case. But also if I had the data, then it'd be fascinating. It's kind of my way to contribute back to the space. No one's ever done 5 marathons faster before, nor have they done it with kind of the level of data that I have. So I probably should say some have done 4 marathons, which is where I got the idea from. So there's a Dr. Ian Lake in the UK who I have to send a lot of credit his way for helping me and planting the seed for what I did with his 4 marathons as a type 1 diabetic. So the data that I got was around anything I could possibly capture, I tried to. So I tracked everything from my blood sugar levels, wearing a continuous glucose monitor. I tracked my ketones using sort of finger prick testing. Obviously, I weighed myself. That was an obvious one. But I also had a full blood panel beforehand. So Dr. Paul Mason drew me up a full blood panel, which was a scary number of vials, I should say. And that was the day before all of it, including I had a full body DEXA scan the day before. And then repeated all of that after my 5 days. So I'd have a baseline and comparison for the two of those. So the other one you mentioned, was sleep. So I wear an Oura ring. So I think you have a similar thing. It's really cool, the stuff you can get out of that. And going into it, actually with all of that stuff, I had a view as to what things would be like. And the reality of that was very different, I think, would say on a few fronts. So sleep was one of those. Yeah. I thought sleep would be, okay, I've run a marathon, I'm exhausted, I'm knackered, I haven't eaten, and we're just going to crash and fall asleep. The reality was I was so wired up, like I was buzzing, and I kind of felt like I had too much energy in my mind. It was like my mind was racing and my body's like, no, we need to chill out here. And it's a bit like, when you're so excited about, I don't know, Christmas or your birthday the next day and your mind's racing, it's like, okay, I need to get to sleep, but I can't. So, and that makes it even harder to get to sleep. It was a bit like that because I knew on the sleep front that, okay, I've only got a number of hours here before I have to hit the road and run again. So let's maximize that. And the stress of that, I think, probably didn't help me getting much sleep. So it was very difficult for that.
It's really also hard on your nervous system because you're putting your body under so much physical stress and then you're not eating. So it's like, I can imagine how your nervous system would be irritated and you wouldn't be able to fall asleep.
Yes. So just also on that too. So the other things that, like what I'd planned for was, look, I'm demonstrating the amount of energy that's available in our body by doing something sort of pretty crazy and pretty long with the running. Now, I absolutely achieved that and did it in a way where I had far more energy than I knew what to do with. So I literally wasn't tired by the end. At no stage through any of this I was actually tired. Like my big muscles had no muscle soreness, none of that.
The whole time?
The whole time, none of it. And even like mentally, like I had no issues at all.
No? Were you hungry?
Not at all. No. So I would think about food because I tried to track everything. And one of those things I tracked was to say every night, am I hungry? Now you ask yourself that question. So now it's a bit like saying, don't think of an elephant. Yeah. What are you thinking of, right? And that's, so at those times, and even like my mates at the time would send me like photos of their dinner to go, mate, you sure you're not hungry? Like, it's like, cheers guys. Like, you sort of push my buttons here. But even then, not really. So if I would say like I'm 0, I'm not even thinking about food. 10, I'm ravenously hungry, I must eat. The highest I got was about a 3, I would say. And that was probably day 3, I think, and it got easier after that.
Yeah.
So, and the energy side was fine. And mentally, as I said, I was sharp the whole way through to the point where, so I'm still, like, I'm doing this by myself. So I take phone calls because I'm not running it like sprinting my way around. I'm just doing it sort of at a slow, steady pace. So, and I took a few phone calls, and some of those being work phone calls. And it wasn't until a day or two after they spoke to me and said, hey, mate, were you running a marathon while you were talking to me? Like they didn't even know that I was doing that.
Okay.
While I was running. So like I wasn't off with the fairies is kind of my point.
Okay. And did you have any friends joining you to do a little bit with you, like few laps or?
I had a couple. Yeah, I did. And that was really good. It was really, and it did a couple of things. One, it was great for them to have them run with me, but also knowing that like I had, big shout out to Harry to help me on day 4 of my marathon. It was probably the last hour he joined me, where just knowing he was coming, it was like, okay, right, my finish line's a little bit shorter than otherwise it would have been because all I got to do is get to when someone turns up to run with me. But for the first 3.5 marathons, I was definitely on my own. So people would check in on me and my wife would be tracking me on the satellite, Life 360 or whatever it was. And, but yeah, I was pretty much a lone wolf. So, but the other thing I should add just about how I felt was, like in terms of being tired and the energy, that was totally fine. I was in a lot of pain. So because I'm a terrible runner, my running style is horrible. And like I said, my joints and everything was really hurting because certain muscles were compensating for others. And I did finish with like grade 2 sprains in my ankles because that the amount of volume I'd done, I describe it, I hadn't earned the right to be able to move that far over that short amount of time with that little recovery. So, and the way that I would describe it is it wasn't an energy issue or any of that. So my analogy is, look, if you're driving your car and you figure out that you could drive 100,000 kilometers on one tank of fuel, like that's a pretty awesome achievement. But you've worn your brakes and tyres out along the way. So that's how I describe it. It's like my brakes and tyres just couldn't handle the amount of work that I'd done, even though like I could have mentally and physically kept going. It was more my ligaments were like, no, we're done. Like this is, you're breaking us now.
So you were in pain every day? Because before you said you weren't in pain.
Sorry, let me make that distinction. Yeah. So I was in pain because of like joint pain and like think of sprained ankles, like swelling joints. So while I'd be running, there'll be periods there it would be excruciating. So I also learnt that my body only likes to let me know one thing hurts at a time. So if my hip's really hurting, then my knees really start to hurt because I've worn them out. My hip doesn't hurt anymore and it sort of moves its way around my body. So I was absolutely in a lot of pain while I did it because it's not the fuel issue that I was trying to demonstrate. It was just that I'm a terrible runner and I hadn't earned the right to be able to run as far as I can. So anyone that's done any significant distance knows that stuff goes wrong. But the lack of muscle soreness that I described is, I would say it's a very different thing. So where I'm talking about my joints are really hurting while I'm running. Now think of like any event, call it like when I was in my carb days, if I did any sort of intense exercise or anything, it's kind of like walking up the stairs, like your quads are screaming at you and it's like you can't get out of a chair and like everything's really biting and it's like that's the big muscles that I'm describing. I had zero of that, like not even close. It was, okay, my knees are hurting while I'm walking up the stairs. It's not my quads and my muscles. Yeah. Like I feel like I could still squat without any issue, but it was, feeling like needles in my joints was kind of the bit that got me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for clarifying that. So back to the Oura Ring.
Yeah.
Do you remember what was your HRV and your stress levels like? Were they like during and after the challenge?
Oh, I'll have to pull it up. But what I can tell you was that I did have like some of the stress markers. So like my restlessness was very, very, let's call it, I'll say restlessness was high, so it was very red. Like if anyone has an Oura and you look at the app and say what it is, it's very suboptimal is where I would put it. So, and also my sleep was very broken. So I'd have a lot of periods of very little REM sleep, very little deep sleep. It would be, I was kind of in and out and very, very restless. So I would wake up feeling like that as well. If anyone's ever worn one of those rings, it does, correlate pretty well to how you feel the next day, and you can kind of look at it. So it very much just backed up, kind of like at the end of the day, I probably didn't need it because my body was telling me that you had a really bad sleep, but just the nerd in me likes to know why and what does it look like. So, so that was one. And I would say, look, the night before my final marathon was probably my toughest one. But that was because of a sin that I'd made in that I took an anti-inflammatory a couple of days prior. And one of the consequences of doing that is, I now learned the hard way, is your body can retain a lot of water. And that coinciding with how hot it was at the time, it was a heat wave in Sydney when I did it. So average temperature was between sort of 33 and 38 degrees, like very, very hot. I overhydrated on one of those days. So the night before my final marathon, so I'd done 4 marathons, I rang up Dr. Paul Mason. I said, look, my ankles are like massive. And I also weigh as much as I did before I started all of this. Like that surely can't be normal. Like what's going on here? He's like, yeah, okay. And we're not normal. What you need to do is we need to drain that fluid out of your legs. So he instructed me what I need to do is lie on my back, put my feet in the air, like up the wall, and just let all this fluid drain out. So I was joking at the time going, look, I feel a bit like one of those Chuck Norris jokes like where I'm just waiting for dawn and not actually sleeping. So that was me the night before. So obviously my Aura Ring backed that up. There was not a lot of sleep with me just lying there with my feet in there.
Yeah, no, I saw the pictures of you lying with your feet up. I wanted to ask if you actually slept like that.
Yeah, so yeah,
Insane.
I've got sleep. We'll use that term loosely, but I did. I lost 2 kilos overnight just through all of that fluid clearing out, and that sort of set me up okay for the next day. But my instruction also was for that final marathon to really finish the marathon dehydrated. So definitely don't go sort of too hard on the water. So that was difficult because of how hot it was, but I had to be really careful that I wasn't overhydrating, because that can be literally a life-threatening situation.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. I wanted to ask you more specifically about your results. So you said you did your blood tests before and after and all sorts of tests.
Yeah.
Did you find any interesting results before and after?
Yeah, plenty. So we can run through all of those. So let's start with blood glucose. So that's one of them. So everyone believes, well, correctly, the glucose is really important for your bodily functions. Your brain runs on it, and you need it for a whole bunch of reasons. Now, the fact I wasn't eating, and the reason I did this fasted was because we could definitively say I didn't get anything from any exogenous source. So what did my blood glucose levels look like over that 5 days? The answer was, according to CGM and the finger prick testing that I did 3 times a day, before a marathon, after, and in the evening, it was absolutely rock solid. So it sat comfortably between sort of 4.5 to sort of up to about 6, but call it 5.5 for most of those days. Apart from like the ordinary blips around like the dawn effect at 6 a.m., which I had in all my training, and even during all of this, I would have a spike in my blood glucose. It was sort of business as usual. So my body was making all of the glucose that it needed through gluconeogenesis, as predicted, and it did its job. So that was great to see, and it's awesome data on that. The other one was my ketones. So I checked my ketones prior and through all of this, and often in the keto world, everyone loves their ketones, but I'm not sort of obsessed about those. I don't think higher is better by any measure, but they are a side effect, and they are an indicator that my body is in a state of ketosis, and it is in functioning how I want it to be functioning to achieve what I needed to achieve, which was to be efficiently burning my fat for fuel. So my ketone levels, even going into this, and remember I said I was hardcore carnivore for like 3 months prior to doing this, my ketone levels sat between 0.1 to about 0.3 millimoles per litre, and never any higher than that. Yeah. And I was doing significant training at the time too, but I was eating regularly. Now, when I did my fasting, they started at those levels, and then they gradually crept up, and then they crept up a lot. So sort of went from 0.1 to 1.1, 1.8, all the way up to 4.3 is where they finished on my final marathon. But again, that was giving me some confidence that my body's doing exactly what it should be doing. So I got some awesome stats on that. And the next day they were back down at 0.1, like it was once I had my meal. And they was sort of, it probably took it 2 days, I should say. But they did come back to baseline. So it was just more data if you want. So it is, yeah.
Interested. So you lost only 1 kilo of fat throughout the 4 days.
Yes.
And your blood glucose levels were normal.
Yes.
It means your body was creating the glucose from your muscle.
Correct. Yes.
So how much muscle mass did you?
Yeah. So to describe this, so I did, like I said, it's very accurate, and I checked it on the scales, but I did my DEXA scan, full body scan, the day before and the day after. So my change in body total weight was 3 kilos. So 1 kilo only of fat is what I lost, and then the other 2 kilos is the combination, as DEXA describes, as muscle fiber, water, and glycogen. So the 3 of those combined. So it's not just pure muscle, but it is, if it's not fat, it falls in the other bucket. Yep. So there were 2 kilos of that I lost. Mm-hmm. So a total of 3 kilos, which it's kind of the actual data. So like what I think is astounding is that, I've run the maths and I've done all the calculations before going, have I got enough fat on me to actually do this? And with 11 kilos of fat on me prior, sort of my maths was, it's about 100,000 calories. I can run a marathon, let's be conservative, 3,500 to 4,000 calories is what I'm going to use. So, run the numbers on that, and we'll dial it down a little bit. It's north of 20 marathons of energy I've got stored on me. So if I'm going to do 5, look, I expected to lose about 3 kilos of fat, would be kind of my guess if you wanted to place your bets beforehand. And the fact that I only lost 1 is astounding.
I know. It's super interesting that your body actually didn't use the fat and just use the muscle and convert it into glucose. Did you ask Paul Mason about it? Why does he do that?
Not really. Like, so I think what is astounding, I don't think it used one or the other. Like your body does what it needs to do given the situation that it's in. So it just happened to only need to use, 1 kilo of fat. It's not as though it can use the muscle for energy either. Like you're converting some to glucose and the rest, but your real energy density comes from the fat side.
I know, but the 1 kilo of fat is about human body fat is about 7,700 calories.
Yes.
Which is basically your basal metabolic rate for 5 days. So then everything you used for the marathon, you used from muscle instead of fat.
Yes. So my thoughts around that are that which one of them is true. So what I can definitively say is true, that I burnt 1 kilo of fat and 2 kilos of muscle, like lean tissue, is what I lost. Okay. That I can say is true. What I couldn't say is true is that the maths behind our understanding of it is true. And I think that's a very it's a very important distinction to make, because we can definitively say, no, but this is how it should do, and your numbers are wrong. I was like, they're not wrong, they're my actual numbers. So which part of it is? So it's like Richard Feynman saying that, look, no matter how elegant and beautiful your model is, if it doesn't agree with experiment and your data, your model is wrong. So I think this might be a case of that there's something there. I don't have the answer to it, but if it doesn't match the model and the expectations, I think there's some other questions that need to be understood, or asked, I should say, to understand that model.
I think it's also the DEXA scan. It's not that accurate. Like, I did my DEXA scan at the start of the carnivore challenge, and I'm redoing it after 4 weeks.
Okay.
And they didn't want me to do it after 4 weeks. They said it's too soon and the number will be too inaccurate.
Yeah, okay.
We normally leave at least 8 weeks to have kind of like a little bit more accurate idea. They said it's too soon. So I think doing it after 5 days, probably the numbers are also not that.
Possibly. My understanding of the reasons why they push that out, there's like an 8-week window, is around the issues of radiation. So of actually getting the scan. So that regularly. So I think that may play a part of it. In terms of the accuracy, yeah, look, I don't have a definitive answer on how accurate or inaccurate it is. What I can tell you is that the total weight on my DEXA matched precisely to my scales prior to it, and it matched precisely to it when I finished. So it wasn't as though it was miles out on total weight. Yeah. There might be a blend between the two. But to give you an idea of how accurate it was, the guy, and there's been some jokes about this too, so the guy that was helpfully doing my DEXA, because I had to ask permission to be able to get 5 day apart, DEXA scan. He was like, were you carrying something in your left hand while you were running? I said, yeah, I was carrying my water bottle. He goes, I can tell by your DEXA because of the change in your body composition on your arm compared to the other, which, I think it's an anecdotal sort of, let's call it a piece of evidence to say, well, maybe they're not as wildly inaccurate as what we may be led to believe. I think they're pretty close.
Yeah. Okay. And did you have any other interesting results?
The other things were just with the blood panels. So the interesting things there were that, look, my inflammatory markers were high because I'm burning, like tearing my muscle up. Like anyone, you go to the gym, you're going to be tearing up your muscles. Any strenuous exercise, you're going to have those markers of inflammatory markers. So, and I'm not trying to paint what I did as like this is the answer to everything and nothing breaks. Like I did an extreme thing, and my body was paying the price for it. So my inflammatory markers were very high by the end, but as expected. And so Dr. Paul Mason, sitting down with him, he was like, look, they are high, but they're definitely not out of the realm of, one, what he would have expected given the workload that I'd done. And also he'd seen far worse on athletes doing much less than what I had done. And he works with some of the top athletes in the world. So not that I'm trying to compare myself to them, but more just the numbers to give it a bit of a gauge. So that was one thing. And the other thing was probably the most interesting, which sort of blew his mind a little bit, was my fasting insulin level. So prior to all of this, and again, I'm full carnivore, I don't eat any carbs at all, my fasting insulin level was sitting around 5, always not sitting around, it measured as 5 in my blood test. Now 5 days later, with all my marathons and everything done, it had dropped down to 2. So in a 5-day period, it had dropped so dramatically, which was, in his words, it was quite astounding that he hadn't ever seen that before, and mainly because no one's sort of had the data to sort of support that, that situation.
Yeah, and did you measure your sex hormones as well?
No, I don't think we did, actually. I don't think we did. No, I like, I've got full respect for Paul Mason. So I was like, right, over to you. You measure what you think you would like to see. No, I didn't see, like, I don't have a change in testosterone or anything like that. But I'll check on my numbers. I don't have those on my website yet, but I will be publishing out that.
Interested.
And sort of drip feeding that.
Yeah. Any other interesting results that you would want to share?
They're probably the main ones, I think. Glucose. I think that's probably... No, I think that's probably it. Yeah, of the most interesting. I mean, I've got so much data of like what I've done around.
Yeah.
Probably the other thing that might be interesting data-wise is around like my strategy for running. I think is probably an important conversation. So I wasn't running like trying to break world records of speed or anything like that. It was like, right, let's just cover the distance and go low and slow. So for me, it was like, let's run to a heart rate so that I can manage, one, my level of energy consumption over that period, so I can stretch it out as much as I can. But also, I was terrified that I would pull a muscle. So I didn't want to be sprinting and then pull a hamstring on my first marathon and go, you know what, we've got like 170 Ks to go here and you're busted already. Like that would just add another level of difficulty to it. So keeping it low and slow was part of managing that, because I was very clear around my objective, which was I don't want to pretend I'm a great runner, and I'm not going to pretend this is the fastest way to run a marathon. It might be for me, but either way, that's a different experiment. I think the question was coming back to like the data that we had. So, and how hard was I working? So I was running at like sort of 140 beats per minute is my heart rate. For me is about like a zone 2 is kind of where my target was, and that's kind of where I stuck to. But to give you an indication, in my last marathon, which happened to be my second fastest of all my 5 marathons, I spent, so again, I was running for a very long time, but I spent north of, I think it was 3.5 hours well above sort of zone 2. So I spent sort of zone 3 and beyond for a good 3 hours of that marathon. So in terms of like, am I running fast? No, I'm a terrible runner. Like, I'm not going to pretend I ever am. But was I working hard? Like, my heart rate doesn't lie. Like, it was working pretty hard. So, and I was able to maintain that. And again, I didn't feel tired. It just was like, I'm working hard here.
Yeah, it's interesting. And would you ever consider running a marathon carb loaded to see the difference, or feel the difference, I should say?
Oh, that scares me now. Like, given what I know, it's like, that sounds like it's so much more painful. Like, so in my mind, it's like, what could be the next experiment? It would be like, let's see if we can rinse and repeat, do all of this, but like do a carb loading. And I'm the guy that's done both. Like, that would be good, but I am terrified of doing that because of how hard I think that would be. Like, because of the hard parts about what I did and why I would sort of second guess doing it again because of how hard it was like I said, I wore my brakes and tires out along the way, like my ligaments and all of that sort of thing. That's not going to change for me whatever fuel source I'm using. So, I have to prepare myself better to go through that. So there's that side, and that was the tough thing mentally, was to got to keep going when my body's telling me to stop because things are hurting. Now, doing it like I honestly, given how I suppose we've been so preconditioned around the need for carb loading, and I think if you talk to any marathon runner, very few of them will get through without, or even mentally just wanting to have a gel or something to get them through. So to try and do that and stretch it out, I think it would be an additional mental load to be able to say, right, I'm ignoring more signals around hunger, and because the reality is if you eat carbs, you get hungry, and doing a 5-day fast where you're loaded up on carbs and you're reliant on those is genuine torture. Like, it's really, really hard to do. It takes some mental fortitude to do that. Doing a 5-day fast when you're carnivore is like, it's a breeze, like it's comparatively. So my hesitation around trying to do a carb loaded would be, it's adding that extra element of mental load of going, right, I'm now having to ignore these, like my incredible hunger signals here. Yeah, that scares me. That's
I don't know though, because I train fasted. I never train. I don't need to be for training, and I'll do 30K runs fasted. Mm-hmm. And then I race with carbs. Yes. And it feels significantly better with the carbs, I must say. Yeah. Although I have not tried running fully fat adapted, which is what I'm doing now. But when I compare it, it is easier with the carb. Yeah. So, and look, I'm not disputing, like, one marathon is like, you can kind of get that and you can push through. I totally get that. And it's not just the back-to-back marathons, it's the time. So when I'm not running a marathon, I'm still not eating, my body's still working, I've still got my base, but metabolic rate, it still needs to function.
So, and you can't speed that up. So, if I was to go into there with the strategy of, look, if I'm sticking to my analogy around the size of those fuel tanks, it's like, right, let's do this again, but I want to use a fuel tank that's 1/50th the size of the last one. That's what makes me nervous. Given, there are some things you can't unsee and some things you can't unlearn. We have to, if someone could prove me differently, then look, I'd happily accept that. I'm not sort of wedded to my ideas, but I've put a lot of time and effort into this, and I was able to achieve what I did, which most people think is impossible if kind of it's what captures their attention. Why is it impossible? Because just about everyone in the world runs the other way in terms of being high on their carbs, and it's like they can't fathom trying to do that. I'd be very hesitant to want to give that a go.
It is incredible achievement, but as I said, like I do 5-day water only fast regularly, and I couldn't imagine running marathons every day on it. So well done.
The one thing, if you wanted to ask like what I would do, it's not that I would do this yet, but I think a really neat way to put a bow around this would be to do a really fast, like quick marathon. So I don't know if I'm the guy to do that because I'm not a runner, and I have to be really good at running for a while and get really good at that. It's not a nutrition issue so much to speak, but to me that would sort of close it out for me to go, right, I've done long, I've done fast, like quick, and if I could do back-to-back quicks, then that would be even better. So like I said, I'd never done a marathon before, so I didn't know what it would be like. And I can tell you it's a really long way, I learnt that on day one. If I could do it again, it would be, right, could we do it from the other end of it, run a different experiment? It's like, how hard could I stay in the herd zone, like really pushing it? And could I do that longer being fueled on fat than I could on carbohydrates? But I'm not sure I'm the guy for that, but someone will. Someone will soon, I guarantee.
Yeah, I think if someone can prove that they can run as fast or faster in just one fast road marathon, I think that would convince a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I heard there's a research like that coming up, so stay tuned.
Oh, I'm excited about that.
And one last question, or two questions I should say. I ask every of our guests their favorite book, and then also if you could give all the audience one advice, fitness, health advice, training advice, just one advice.
Okay, favorite book is easy. That it ties in very well with what I did. It was the book that changed my life, and that was Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes. It's the definitive history of our understanding of nutrition, all of the science behind it. It is insanely well referenced, and it is insanely comprehensive. I don't know anyone that's read that just didn't change their opinion around kind of their understanding of kind of where we got to. So highly recommend that. Good Calories, Bad Calories, definitely.
Thank you. I'll definitely read that. And advice?
My advice is, look, given what I've done, I would like people to open their minds to the fact that there is another way to think about kind of endurance training, and not even just specifically endurance training, more around the amount of energy that is available on our bodies. So I would like people to at least explore and experiment with the idea of, look, what could you do with 50 times more energy? Like, don't run marathons. Like, I'm not a marathon runner. I may not ever run another one, but it was a way that I could demonstrate that, yes, I actually do have a hell of a lot more energy than not only what I had previously, but what most people think. So my message is, look, explore that, try it for yourself. If you do want to do it, become fat adapted, and then see what you can do with it. And I'm sure some people are going to do some amazing things, and whether that's just like your normal day of like your normal workload and dealing with the kids and running around, like imagine having 50 times more energy and being able to get through all of life's daily battles. Like, to me, that's the most powerful part about all of this. And I love, look, if everyone were able to switch into that, tap into those reserves and really make the most out of their day, then that would be a huge victory. And for me, I'll step back into the shadows and that's day done. So, or my job done. So, but look, I'm looking forward to seeing you in your 50 kilometre run coming up. And as a fat adapted, maybe you can circle back and let me know.
Thank you so much for all this. This is really incredible. It's a fascinating story, and I can't wait to see more of your results on your website. You said you're going to post it, so that's ketomarathons.com.
Correct.
For whoever is interested in Alex. And then, we'll wait for your results and wait to see what's your next challenge.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Albert.
Thank you for listening. Let us know in the comments below what topics interest you, and don't forget to follow us.